All right, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's Snack and Chat, Adopt for Life's weekly Facebook Live, where we explore topics that are top of mind for families formed by adoption, kinship, and customary care. My name is Chantal, a Community Engagement Liaison with Adopt for Life. And today's Snack and Chat, we'll be learning about the Never Too Late program. I'm joined by Aviva Zuckerman Schure, Kate Mannion, and Chloe Hockley. For those of you that are tuning in right now and watching us live, thanks for being here. Feel free to ask your questions, or if you have comments, just put them in the chat below. You know that we love to hear from you. Just a quick reminder, as always, just to be mindful of information that you're putting in the chat. Since we are live streaming on our public Facebook page, that means that information is available to the public. So just be mindful of any identifying information if you are speaking of minors, okay? So with that in mind, we do want to hear from you. Let us know you're watching. Give us a hello and a thumbs up. And I know you're probably all wondering where Catherine is, but she will not be joining us, so I will be attempting to step into the role of host. So we have already a bunch of questions lined up, so we can't wait to get started. I'm just going to introduce you to our guest, Aviva Zuckerman Schure. She has been a leader in the community outreach, and the not-for-profit sector for over 30 years. Her work both as a funder and collaborator has been integral in supporting and guiding organizations. Her work has focused on a diverse range of charitable programs and activities around the world with the aim of improving the lives of women, children, and families. Charitable organizations have included the Canadian Women's Foundation, Voices of Children, Violence Overcome in Creative Ensembles, as well as the Adoption Council of Ontario. So thank you, Aviva. She is also the co-founder of the Never Too Late program, which is a program in partnership with the Adoption Council of Ontario, which has its mandate to promote and facilitate permanency for young people who have exited the child welfare system without, also known as aged out of care. The Never Too Late NTL aims to give back to youth the opportunity to have people in their lives that can provide support, guidance, and most importantly, a sense of belonging. As an adoptive parent herself, Aviva brings her personal passion along with her professional qualifications to the challenge of creating this future. So thanks again, Aviva, for taking time to be with us today. Kate Mannion. Kate first became a parent through adoption when she adopted a sibling group as a single parent. Aware of the need for permanency for youth, 3 years ago, she became permanency for a youth who was almost 17. Together, they've all learned a lot and are deeply committed to continuing to navigate life together through all the ups and downs. Kate now supports other families providing permanency to youth 16 and over through the Never Too Late program, the same program that supported her. Her role includes coaching and support, and in her free time, Kate loves volunteering, reading, and swimming, and most days she can be found dancing in the kitchen with her kids. That's funny because I like to dance in the kitchen too, but my kids just roll their eyes at me. So you're lucky. And now I'll introduce Chloe. Chloe is one of the co-founders of the Never Too Late program. She holds a degree in psychology from Queen's University and is currently pursuing her master's of social work at Wilfrid Laurier University. She also works as a research assistant, analyzing data related to child welfare and permanency. Chloe is passionate about permanency as she has lived experience in the child welfare system and understands the challenges of aging out of the system without permanency. She is currently on a permanency journey with a family that she met through the Never Too Late program and is learning how to navigate joining a family as an adult in her 20s. So again, thanks to everyone, all three of you, for being here. I feel like we got such a rich experience, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation, as I'm sure our community families are too. So I just want to pull that up just to make sure. I'm going to try and do both, ask questions and keep an eye on what's happening in the chat, so bear with me. So I think just to get started, maybe we just just talk about the Never Too Late program in general, like why it started and what its impact is.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us here. So the Never Too Late program started, well, as I mentioned, I was adoptive mom. We adopted our daughter about 9 years ago in September. She was 16. She was 3 weeks shy of her 17th birthday, actually, when we met her. And she moved in when she was 17, and we adopted her when she was 18. And although we knew a little bit about adoption and things like that, having gone through the home study process and things, I then decided to sort of spend some time getting to know more about what was going on in that field and where I could potentially do some time, make an investment and do some time. And what really kept coming back to me was this urgency to get these kids, find families for them or find permanency by the time they were 18. I know we certainly felt that with our young person, that there was this huge urgency that this had to happen by X date or it was done. And that seemed really ludicrous. And I started meeting more and more young people who had aged out of care, hearing them speak at different places. And then actually Chloe came and worked. She was hired as a summer student to help me with another project I was working on with the ACO. And, met her and heard all the wisdom that she had about this experience and started saying, well, this seemed ludicrous that there was this kind of arbitrarily set date where all of a sudden it was no one's job in the province to continue to look for permanency for young people. When I was already a mom to 4 kids when our daughter joined our family. And so I knew that the need for parents or that caregiver role certainly did not end at 18 or even close to that. And so also having a business background from way back when, I also was kind of learned about niche marketing, which is you find something no one else is doing and then you step in and do that. Like Adopt for Life really, did when they started up as being that support network for adoptive, kinship, and customary care families, because there was just a gap in that system. And so, Adopt for Life stepped in to do that. And so I decided, well, it seemed like this was a good idea. I thought it was a good idea. People who I had met and spoke to said it was a good idea, like Chloe. And we started to bring together more and more stakeholders, people who were working in homelessness prevention, were working in criminal justice, all kinds of crossover youth who had dealt with child welfare and other systems, of caregivers, people who had provided permanency to older youth, and most importantly to youth who had either aged out of care without permanency, but really saw the need for this to happen for them, or who had found permanency at a later age. And that's how NTL was born. That was about 3 years ago. And since then, we have done quite a lot of things. We have lots of different arms to NTL. It's a bit like an octopus. So we've got tentacles going every which way. We have one area of our Youth Connections Network, which Chloe will talk about, which is for our young people. We have our support for our humans, our caregivers, Kate will talk about, because that's her baby. And then we do a lot of work around recruiting and training and educating people, whether it's people who want to be caregivers, whether it's service providers, about what it means to be that person in a young person's life.
That's great. Thanks, Aviva. That's such important work. And I know that there have been a lot of conversations since, I think, in the last few months about these indicators, like why is it related to age? And I know that there's a lot of work going on and conversations happening about that now, and not making it about a chronological number. So I'm sure that what the program that you're doing is helping a lot of education and educating people about that as well. So thanks. So the next question we have is maybe if we could talk about what happened. So right now it's like, okay, it's 18 and okay, there you go. And like, so what are the realities that those youth may face, and what does that look like? And maybe, explain to our viewers like what that could mean and what that impact that has on that person.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. I think, you kind of age out twice from the system. So you age out at 18, and you're kind of pushed out of your foster home or group home, your place of residence. And then you receive a little bit of financial support until 21. But once 21 hits, you're completely cut off. And I kind of could describe it as just kind of walking off a cliff. That there's no other better way to describe it than just more being pushed. I would say not walking, being pushed off a cliff. For me, I aged out in my second month of my final year of university for my undergrad. And I just remember people around me were planning for graduation, they were planning trips, they were planning what they were going to do. And I was stressed about where I was going to live, what city I was going to move to. While everybody was stressing about exams, I was stressing about this. And I think that going away to school, I really realized, when university dorms close, like where is someone going to go if they don't have a place to go back to? So it's just, and the thing is, the reality is that we live in a province where I think it's like almost 50% of people between the ages of 20 and 29 live at home. And I live in Toronto, and I'm sure it's much higher because of the prices here and because of COVID. And people who age out of care just don't have that option. They don't have that place to go to, that home to call home, the place to go for holidays. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it, right? No options, right? And like, as you say, it's something that people don't think about. Most people or kids that grow up in their families, they don't move out when they're 18. Most of them, some of them do maybe, but it's not a situation where it's just, okay, now you've reached an age, so you're on your own. So the more I think that this gets out there, I think there's a lot of people just don't know, to be quite honest. So thank you, Chloe, for sharing that. Now, like Aviva, you were saying, one of the sort of branches is the youth connections network. So maybe we can talk more about that branch now and how that came to be, what it does and why it's important.
I'll hand that over to Chloe to actually talk about.
Sure, for sure. So I think once we first started NTL and bringing young people who had experience in care together to kind of design the curriculum that we do, I think we noticed instantly that even just coming together in that room, having dinner together, being in an environment together with people who might have had different experiences than you, but still kind of get it. That I think was one of the key indicators here that, we need to have support because it can be isolating. Aging out of care, not having permanency, even having permanency can be an isolating experience, especially when you're navigating this as an adult. And, I have very supportive people in my life and lots of friends, but no one can really understand the experience of getting a family when you're in your 20s. And most people can't relate to that. So kind of having people that you can relate to, that you can talk to about issues that people in the out of this world may not really understand. So we kind of noticed when designing the curriculum just how getting together was so important, doing things together as a team. We've done bowling together, we've done different activities that have kind of built our relationships together. I think we came together and we did we recorded quite a few podcasts for our training that we deliver in the sessions. And it's a really good experience for people to be open about what they're going through and to lean on each other. I always think going to therapy is great, relying on other people in your life is great, but I think peer support is just something that's invaluable. I think that being able to talk about things that other people understand is really crucial in this experience, because it definitely can be isolating, even in the adoption community, like saying, oh, I met my family above the age of 18 is something that's really uncommon. So to kind of have people that you can talk to who kind of know what you're going through. And one of the really biggest things about NTL's Youth Network is that you never age out. I think think young people from care age out of so many systems. Like I, aged out at 21, and then there's some services after that, but then you age out at 29. Whereas here at NTL, you can be any age. And I think that's something that you never age out of NTL, which I think is really important because youth from care need somewhere where they never age out from.
The Youth Connections Network sort of has an advocacy part, it has a support role, it has an education role, and has a social role, because we want all the young people to connect however they want to connect into the network. So those are all the kinds of pieces, and we're really trying to grow that this year, so that it becomes a more, as Chloe mentioned, it started kind of in a very like organic way, but at this point, and designing the curriculum, which is our Training for Humans, which is our form of pride training called Training for Humans. And so what we want to do now is turn it into something that's intentional, right? That has really a being and exists to be able to support youth who are either wanting to explore permanency at a later age or have already started that path and need other people that they can go, what the heck is this? Or like, how do you manage it when your humans do this? Or, all the things that we want for our caregivers, we also want our young people to have that same support network.
Yeah, youth need just as much support as caregivers do. So that's why we, believe in that.
Yeah, and I think that point, like the stressing about the peer support is like 100%, right? I mean, Adopt for Life is that peer support is for adoptive parents or caregivers, so that you don't have to have this whole backstory and explain, like there's just that instant, like, okay, these are my people, they're gonna get it. Or that peer support if you're an adoptee or a youth from care. I think that's 100%. It's just to have that, like, okay, we understand each other, like without even really having to say anything, right? Like, that's so important.
And to Chloe's wise point,
Yeah.
how many people that your neighbors, your friends, your family have adopted, right? Usually you meet other adoptees through adoption, like you're right, Adopt for Life's got some wonderful supportive groups. But then if you look at how many people met their youth or their child when they were 16 plus, the numbers are so small, right? And there's things about it that are really unique. And so coming together really, really, we find is beneficial for all the reasons you said.
100%. That's so cool. So I heard you say Training for Humans. I don't know where that. No, it's somewhere in the questions, but I want to know about Training for Humans. For all humans.
Yes, Training for Humans. Yes, I mean, we always laugh because people are always like, I thought I was already a human, but yes, I wasn't. So the term humans is the term that we use or the other term we use is NTL parents. And so we use both. It's a way to be respectful of language. For many young people, they have parents. Well, everybody has parents. Many of them are still connected to their parents, or they feel that using that term with other people would be disrespectful. But what they want are, enduring, safe, unconditional connections. And so at our very first meeting that Chloe was there at, one of our young people was like, when you age out of care, you get like money, you get like a brochure with services, you get a worker, and all I want is a human being who's not paid to be there. And we're like, great. So let's, use that term humans with a capital H to represent the caregivers in our relationship. Some youth, they'll want that term, and parents and family is one that really does resonate for them. And so we try to interchange that, but our training is called Training for Humans. And what it is an 8-session series, which used to be done live, but has now been delivered successfully 3 times online. And it's 24 hours of training plus an orientation that looks at the beginnings of the toolbox. And what I think it really is really that first challenge to the caregivers, to the humans, about what they need to look at in their lives to be able to be the people they need to be for their young person. So what it isn't is a whole long 24 hours of all the pathologies and behaviors that you can expect when these young people join your family. They are about what are you going to do to make sure that you are as resilient as a caregiver, that you have are able to manage yourself so that you can be the very best caregiver to your young person. And it's also, again, the beginning of building a community. We felt like the more we do this work, we see that what we deliver, the materials we deliver are so important. All of our deliveries, so all of the trainings are co-delivered by youth or young people with lived experience and by caregivers with lived experience of caregiving. So that's a really big piece of it. And they're co-facilitators. They're not like advisors or, tell a story at X amount. And what we see though, is it's the building of the community and the conversations that happen that are the most beneficial than any of the curriculum that we can deliver in lots of ways. And Chloe and Kate have been involved in lots of delivery and can add stuff to that. I'm sure that as well.
Well, yeah, one of the things I would add is just that I've participated in a lot of things, sometimes revolving child welfare, and sometimes it can be tokenistic. And I feel like this program is so much different than that. We actually get a say in the actual curriculum that's delivered. We get a say in what we want to say, what we don't want to say. And youth have been an active part of that process since day one. So I think that that's really important.
Yeah, I found myself nodding along, because I was a participant and I had the great pleasure of learning with Chloe and Aviva all the kind of wisdom that they imparted. But it really was that shift, right? From just understanding, right? To really thinking about, well, why am I finding this hard? Right? What is it that maybe I'm bringing to the situation? It's not my fault. It's not anybody's fault, but what can I do to shift? Right? For the first time in far too many years, I was looking at, well, what are my triggers and why am I being triggered by that? And what could I do? So it really, I feel, kind of gives people really good life skills. And to joke on the name human, a lot of people say afterwards, oh my gosh, it made me a better human overall too. So that's always nice feedback, right? Mm-hmm.
That's great. So that's the training. So somebody is interested, like how does that process work? How is everybody just taking the training and then you're like, well, maybe you don't qualify, like, or
I'm not blunt about it, Chantal. No, we're much better.
I know you're probably much more diplomatic.
Our social worker. We say that. So no, and actually, well, Chloe's the social worker, but Kate and I are not social workers. So we have a process. So we have people who come into us in all different ways. So sometimes humans or caregivers are connected to us because they're already doing this in their lives, and they've been connected to us through a Children's Aid Society or another community-based organization who says, oh, here's a group you should, look into all the supports they can offer you. In terms of our connecting, if you're interested, or sometimes a person comes to us and says, I have a young person in my life and I'd like to kind of take that next step and be their person, and can you support me, how can you do that? And then there's people who kind of sign up to say, this is just something that's interesting to me. So the first thing that they do is that there's a free webinar on the ACO website called The Importance of Permanency. And that just outlines sort of what happens to young people on their journeys through foster care, what happens to them both physically and also what happens inside of them. And why that means that when you become a caregiver to them, it's going to be maybe a little bit different than becoming a caregiver to a kid who was born to you. So that's a webinar. It's free for charge. And then people who are interested after that do our mini orientation, which is 2 hours that we do virtually, obviously, but it's kind of live. And in that, our young people like Chloe and the rest of our team talk about what this is, what this is not. Right? Chloe can tell you, Chloe, why don't you give a highlight of sort of what this relationship is and what it's not?
I think sometimes we've had people come to the program kind of thinking that this is like a big brother, big sister model, or kind of like a mentorship, maybe because we're older, so it's not and I don't think anybody has bad intentions in thinking that. I just don't think they're educated yet. But that's where we step in and kind of say, no, like this is a forever commitment. This is a lifelong commitment. This is, whether it becomes on paper or not, like this is forever. And we really try to stress that. So yeah, during the orientations, we have a list of everything that this is and everything that this isn't, because we really want people to know from the get-go that, you know, this isn't a mentorship. It's not a big brother, big sister program. It's family.
Yeah, it's that unconditional commitment, no matter what happens in your life, right? You know, or, you know, in the past, it's always been no matter what the young person does or whatever the young person says. And one of the changes that we've made, you know, based on what we've experienced and what our young people have told us, is that often these things break down because of things that happen in the humans' lives, right? So changes in their lives, huge traumatic events that make them feel like, oh, you know, I can't take this responsibility on anymore. And they kind of walk away from this relationship. And so the stress is also on that no matter what happens in your life as a human or in your young person's life, you will be there. The relationship may shift. It may, you know, you may live together, you may not live together, whatever, but that you are their person when you take that on, that role on. And so they come to the mini orientation, and then we usually wait about 3 or 4 weeks so that we really want people to kind of buy into it themselves. So, you know, we were joking before about like people kind of like us saying, well, you're not really ready. But we also love when people self-select out, you know, when they come to one event or 2 events and then they're like, not for me, because it means that we feel like we're being realistic in what we're asking for, and they're being thoughtful and respectful to young people by saying that's not something I can do. And there are lots of other things that you can do if that's not the role that you want to take on, and we can talk about that later on, about, you know, all the different kinds of roles there are for people. So people who then want to move on, not making a commitment, you don't have to walk away with a kid, they sign up to do the sessions. Like there are 8 sessions, 3 hours at a time, online. And then after that, if they're still interested, then they fill in and do go through sort of a police check, vulnerable sectors check, references, and a very thorough application form that looks a little bit like a home study, but has been vetted and written by young people. And they go through that. And again, it's not for us to judge, but almost for them to judge themselves, for them to look at what is it, where are the places that I still need to work on? What are the things that are going to be challenging for me? And we come to that all together. They also are expected to connect to our services, our post training and matching services, which is a very robust group of one-on-one coaching and groups and buddies and things like that too. And then all of that means that at a time they may be connected to a young person.
And it can take a while, you know. I think we're really clear that it's, you know, we're not committing to like in the next 6 months we will be connecting you with, and I actually think people like that. And people often say to me, you know, a year ago I thought I was ready, and I look at what I've learned in the last year and I think, oh, thank goodness. You know, so and in that time, you know, as Aviva shared, people are continually engaging. It's not like they just hear from us once in a while. We have about 8 groups a month. We have groups for people who have not yet been connected with the youth. We have groups for people who are actively NTL parenting or being a human in a youth role. We have a group, you know, all sorts of different groups, because our families are very diverse and have a diverse level of need. And through that, they're also receiving that coaching that Aviva mentioned. So despite the fact that, you know, maybe they're not actively yet being a human, they're continuing to grow and learn. We have a book group, you know, we have all sorts of things that help people. It's that kind of self-reflection, right? It's looking at what are the things in my life that maybe I need to do some work on. What is it that I might struggle with? What in my relationships that I'm already in is hard? And what will that look like when I'm permanency for a youth? Yeah, lots and lots. It's really like a huge conversation that doesn't stop. And I think another thing too is that that support is not time sensitive. So somebody might have welcomed a youth, you know, as Aviva mentioned, really well that, often people will find us and they've welcomed youth themselves, not through NTL, 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago. And that could be a kin relationship. It could be somebody that they fostered, a plethora of personal situations. And for us, they don't receive any less supports, or no less supports available to them than somebody who welcomed their youth earlier on. Sometimes people might be very actively involved and then it will be a little bit quieter, but they're always welcome back. It is a complete open door policy. And I think that's really helpful because, I remember when I first set out to adopt, thinking, well, I need to find some support for now. And I remember feeling like when the probation period was over, we went to court, like that was it, we were done. And oh yeah, no. I had a lot of learning to do, which is what led me to NDL in the first place. And we're all people, right? We're all people with things that might be easy today, that might be really hard for you 3 months from now. And I think there's a real appreciation of that. While the expectation is really, really high, right, in terms of what permanency is, and that's not something that's taken away, and that's not something that is, if you do this, then this, that is taken off the table. I think there's also a great understanding about what humanity is and the support that every single person will need. And that just because you welcome your first, second, third child or youth, or you've done this before, it doesn't mean you're an expert in this kid or in your own triggers or your own struggles. And together we're going to help you with that.
That was nice. Beautiful. Thank you. I mean, just the way you describe the process, it's just not something that you feel like you would want anybody to rush through. I mean, it's so in depth and people need that time to reflect, right? And like you said, if they can reflect and come to the decision that, okay, yes, I want to move forward, then okay, let's learn more. Or if they come to the point you know what, I'm not ready, I'm going to take a break and come back because I have to do this work, right? So yeah, there's no expected timeline on any of this. Nothing is static. Everything is moving and changing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a word there that you used, and I think it's in, I don't know if it was on the website or something that I read about this sort of toolbox. Is there any, I'm curious, can you share a little bit, what's in this? Is this part of the toolbox for human trainings for humans?
You mean besides a bottle of wine? No.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other things in there too. Kate and Chloe can talk about those for sure from 2 different perspectives.
Chloe, it's up to you if you want to go first. I'm happy to as well, whatever works for you.
Go first.
Okay. It's a phrase we use, and I think it's really handy, right? Because it's a visual, right? We all know what a toolbox looks like. And, when I was kind of when I first heard the phrase, I remember thinking, well, what's that? And then I was, reflecting back on, all those tools that you have in your toolbox are fabulous, right? If you want to take a door off its hinge or you need to take a wall down, but you can't necessarily use them interchangeably, right? I mean, you want to take a door off a hinge and you use a hammer, you're probably not going to have the door left to be able to put back on the hinge when you're ready. And I think for us, it's, Aviva used a word that I quite love about being really robust and understanding that the variety of needs that people will have. And what works for one person won't necessarily work for another person. And so it's building a program. We're all experts in ourselves, right? Or we like to think we are. I mean, I have learned a lot about myself that I'm very clear now. I was never an expert in myself, but I'm getting there. But that doesn't mean that we understand what other people have going on that bring them to the table. And I think so often when we have supports, people have to slot into something, right? I'm just going to make something up. Let's say you can get support from someone Wednesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Well, if you are parenting your nephew and you are working in retail and long hours, or you're an essential worker, maybe that doesn't work. Do you not get support, right? So I think, we try and look at it as a toolbox of support in terms of, making sure that we have lots of options and lots of ways for people to get what they need, whether that's kind of one-to-one, whether that's buddying, whether that's supportive groups, whether that's another agency. I think that we are really clear that we are part of a bigger movement of this, and that there's a lot of other people out there who can provide support as well. And it's really kind of understanding and appreciating that diversity of needs and diversity of experience, and that we're not here to sell, not that we, sell the program, but sell the program to anyone. What we're trying to do is build a community that supports people with where they are. And, sometimes people don't know about certain tools, right? And that's not to say, again, that they, back to that analogy, we're not really gifted at the other ones. But sometimes there's something that, if you learn to use, can make things easier, or can make things better, or can do that thing that you wish they would do, could happen. So I think understanding really the biggest part of our toolbox is community and one another. The best thing that can possibly happen is not that somebody sits and listens to me speak, not at all, but that, has a challenge and thinks, hey, somebody mentioned that. They mentioned they did this. Let me connect with them and see, how did they do that? Because maybe that would help me too, right? It's that building those bonds together. And I think that makes your toolbox so much stronger. And I'm sure, a year or two from now, we'll think of tools that we don't have yet. And that's okay. But it's really the youth and the families that are our biggest teachers. It's not, I don't know about your view. It's certainly not me sitting behind a desk.
No.
Yeah. And that's
yeah.
really,
I would say that the same thing that we want for our young people, which is unconditional, lifelong, a place to belong to, are the things that we see as being the most important things for people to be able to do this work, which is that they have a place that they belong to, that they have these supports themselves and this community where they can go in and out, where they're not judged, where they're, they can be like in a family, you can be held to certain kind of standards and said like, oh, do that. But ultimately, you will be embraced for who you are. And so we try that our program also reflects the same values that we want our families to reflect. So we can't really say we want you to be really like flexible and walk alongside in your young person's journey and then not give people that exact same experience as they walk through the journey. So we really want it to try to be a mirror of each other.
Yeah, love that. Somebody just said toolbox of support. Love that. And I was thinking too, like that toolbox, just like building relationships and building community and not focusing on those. It's not about the individual tools. It's about all of it coming together.
Yeah, yesterday I was listening to a podcast that Dr. Bruce Perry was talking on, and he was saying how, he isn't married really to just one kind of therapy or one, because for some people, they really respond to CBT. And then another person's like, no, art therapy. So it's, he was talking about, having this huge variety of things. And when people get married to one model, that's often when they kind of are like, well, it didn't work. Right. So I guess like therapy doesn't work for me. So we're trying to offer as many different supports as possible so that people feel connected and they can belong no matter who they are.
That's great. I think everybody should do that all the time, every day, no matter where they are. So if you can believe it, we have like 8 minutes left and like a bunch of questions. So maybe we'll just like pause halfway through and just sort of get the message out for people who are watching or maybe watching this on replay, whether they're a caregiver or who want to be a human for somebody, or maybe they're a young person, or maybe they're a support person. Like, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah,
how
I'll
do people
do
find
that.
out more?
There was one question that I thought maybe if we had a chance to ask, which is for those who are watching and awaiting parents and considering being a permanent parent to an older youth, what are the benefits?
Yes,
we've got
very important question.
Maybe, finish us off with this and then we can talk about ways to connect. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think we still have time for a few more. I just wanted to.
I just think that's a really important question.
For sure, I do too.
I think first of all, kind of starting this journey as someone who's awaiting in this journey is it's kind of how Kate spoke about that. It's a process, it's a journey. It's going to take time, it's going to take effort. But I think, I always talk about this because whenever we talk about a session, when things get hard, I always talk about how the fact that even though things might be challenging for you as a parent, this process might be hard sometimes, the hardest thing for us is for the youth, because we are taking the greatest risk. Like, we have already experienced so much loss in our life. We've experienced so many breakdowns, loss of original family. And for us to kind of agree and say, yeah, you're one of my people. You're one of my people now, to me is just kind of the greatest thing, like, to just be able to say, like, you know, I have family now, and they're really great. And, you know, but I have not had good experiences in the past. I have had breakdowns in the past. And just wanting people to know that this takes time, that, you know, we need time to open up. We need time to trust. I think is really important. And what I would want people to know is that no matter maybe how hard or long this process might be, or how hard things get, just kind of try to put yourself in our shoes for a second and imagine how scary and nerve-wracking this can be for us, but how wonderful it can be, and to just kind of go through life's journeys and life's ups and downs.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Chloe.
Yes, so on our website, which we are not website, our web page, we are, which is I mentioned, we're revamping to make it much clearer and stuff. We'll have, and right now it's there, but it's kind of hard to find. So we sort of have a few different places. So adoption.on.ca/NTL is our web page, and so there you can sign up for our newsletter, which gives lots of information about our upcoming events. We have a great section of tips. We have question of the month, which we're always looking for people to ask questions. We always have something written by one of our young people there. So that's a great way to kind of find out a bit more about NTL. And there's past newsletters there as well that you can read about. It gives you a really good taste of what we are and what our perspective is, because we do operate a little bit differently than lots of other organizations. We're lucky that we live in that space where we get to do that, and we kind of turn a lot of the traditional model on its head. So reading those will give you kind of a good idea of that. You can also sign up when we have an orientation coming up. You can sign up for one there. There is a form for young people. So generally young people come to us who are part of either another youth serving organization. They come along with them, or they're referred by them, or they partner with that organization, because we ourselves don't really intake youth because we just don't have that support for them the way that they deserve to have. So we usually ask if they're going to come in with one of the organizations they're working with. But if a youth really wants to find out more and doesn't, they should get in touch, and we will try to figure out who they can work with to be able to do that, because they shouldn't be excluded. So there is definitely a space for them as well to get information. Service providers often get in touch with us. We work with lots of different organizations, helping them in lots of different ways. And as Kate mentioned, NTL is a program, but the idea of it is to be a movement, so that every other organization would be, making permanency for their young people front and center, while they're looking for housing, and when they're looking for financial literacy and all of these, they're understanding that with permanency, you get all of that, hopefully. And so we're always happy to work with service providers as well, so they can send in, and humans who are connected to young people who were placed with them after 16 can connect as well there, and can join our network there. So our webpage is the best place to go to get more information.
Okay, and I'll put it in the chat. It's just with Kath. Usually I'm doing all this behind the scenes, and all these links magically appear in the comments for people to click, but I will be going in after the fact and putting that in. So for those watching live, just come back, check the comments for those links if you missed it. But it's pretty straightforward, right? Just go to adoption.on.ca and /NTL, and you'll get all the information and how to get in touch. I just wanted to say that there was a comment that I'll read you guys. The more supports for youth and families, the better. What a great organization to be a part of. Thank you for caring about those young people that end up on their own without a permanency plan. So, there's a lot of people that really appreciate the work that you're doing. So we just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days to be here and share all your experience and your personal journeys. It's really appreciated. So I just wanted to say thank you. There's, a couple minutes left. So I just, we like to do on Second Chat is sometimes at the end, just kind of turn the table. I mean, if there's anything that you want to ask us in terms of the Adopt for Life community, what can we do to support? Or if there's just something maybe that didn't come up in the questions today, just if there's anything else you want to mention or something that you want us to think about before we go. I'll just open it up.
One of the great questions that Catherine had sent was about, and we talked about people who don't complete the training or complete the training and say, well, this isn't for me. Like, it doesn't mean that there isn't a place for you, right? Like young people, like that person who sent in that beautifully kind comment, young people need people. And so they certainly need a captain to the team, which is what our NTL parents are, but they also need a team. And you can be part of that team. You might have skills. You might, we often, one of the things many young people from CARE don't have is this social capital, right? They don't know people. They don't have connections. So, we'll have someone who'll say like, oh, actually, I'm a copywriter and I would love to donate some time. Do you have any, would that be helpful? And I'm like, sure. One of our young people is working on a book. Could you help them edit their book? Oh, one of our young people is doing this. So there is a space for everyone in all of this, whether it's, donating, whether it's your time, whether it's becoming a human. If you want to be a connection to a young person, there are ways that you can do that. And so don't think that if you can't make that full commitment, oh, well, I wish I could, but I can't. There are still things that you can do. It does take a lot of people to support, none of us, even if we do have families such as, the two people, we have wider communities and networks. Chloe talked about that, all the people who she has in her life other than her family as well. So there is a place, and there's organizations that do mentorship. We are always happy for people who want to connect with young people, even if it's not through making that NTL, ultimate commitment. As long as people are upfront about it from the beginning, then, we can usually find a spot to be an auntie or a supporter in another way. So don't let that limit you. If
there's room for everyone in the community, right?
Yeah.
Everybody can have a role to play. So it's just, reach out and find out more, right? Well, thanks again, everyone. I'm mindful of the time. I don't want to keep you over. So I know you already shared so much of your time and so much with us, so it's really appreciated. Thank you. I just want to say to those watching, like, this Snack and Chat's going on holiday, so we'll be back at the end of August. We're coming back August 31st for our session on back to school, how to help transition back to that. Who knows what it will be, but we'll do our best because we don't know what it's going to look like yet. So until then, everyone, take care of yourselves and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much again.
Thanks, Chantel.
All right, take care, everyone.
You did a great job.
Thanks.
Doing
Come back next week.
Well done.